Well, let me comment on something that Charlie said in passing, and he didn't, I think, quite mean it the way it could be heard, because the way it could be heard was actually not what happened with the Buddha. He said that the Buddha woke up to an idea, and then he went on to talk about what the Buddha really woke up to. But I want to talk to this notion that the Buddha woke up to an idea. And the point is that the Buddha did not wake up to an idea. He woke up to the morning star. He woke up to his original nature. Just as Charlie woke up. Just as Charlie woke up to his dislocated shoulder. And somebody just said that she can't hear anything. I don't know what to tell you because I've been hearing things. I mean, I've been hearing what people have been saying. I've been hearing things. Play with your volume controls. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah. So this notion that we need to believe in an idea is incredibly misleading. People often ask Buddhists, what do you believe? And if you tell someone that you practice Zen or you practice Buddhism, they say, well, what do Buddhists believe? And yeah, there are some forms of Buddhism that are defined by certain beliefs, but Zen is not one of those. So it's not what we believe, it's what we perceive. And perceive very deeply in a place that's before speech and before thinking. I remember a long, long time ago, my husband had borrowed a friend's bicycle, and there was a problem with the headset, which is the way that it's the handlebar, whatever you call it, the handlebar is attached to the frame, and all of a sudden it didn't work. He needed to turn and it didn't turn, and he fell over onto his head, and then he got back on the bicycle, and he was very close to home at the time, and so he sort of limped on a bicycle. That is, he was riding very slowly and having a hard time steering, and managed to get in the driveway, and I saw him, and I could see immediately that was wrong. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I fell off my bike. And it was really clear that he'd had some kind of concussion. And I remember I held up my fingers and I said, how many fingers? And he had to think for a minute. And he said, 2. So I took him straight to the doctor. But when I say how many fingers and you say 2, that instant, there's no thinking involved in that. Just that instantaneous. That's what when Buddha saw the star, it was instantaneous. There was no thinking. There was no hesitation. There was no trying to figure it out. Just instantly, boom! Just like that. And that way of perceiving very clearly, moment by moment by moment by moment, that's not an idea. That's an experience. That's an experience that we all can have. And if we look deeply enough, we all have it, all of the time. So that intimacy with our most intimate, awakened experience, that's Zen. That's what we're practicing. And we're not practicing to attain it. We already have it. We're practicing to realize it. We're practicing to open ourselves to it. So that's what I wanted to say. So thank you again for your talk. Are there any questions now? Unmute yourself. And Eileen, unmute yourself.
In the morning bell chant, the third line says, Samdo Ego Padosan, 3 ways East Pain Shattered Sword Mountain. What are those 3 ways?
I have no idea. It's really interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that too. So Shattering Sword Mountain, so there's this, in Buddhism, Buddhist sort of mythology, I don't know what you want to call it. There in Buddhist imagery, there are these many, many hells. And there's the hell of bright metal, and there's, the earth prison hell, and there's hells of fires and hells of ice, and there are all these different kinds of hells. And one of them is this mountain of swords. And the idea is that you're on this mountain all the time. You're trying to, you're walking on these swords basically, and it hurts. Probably worse than Charlie's shoulder hurt. And so you're walking on these swords. So that's Sword Mountain, the hell of this mountain of swords. But I don't know what the three ways are. I mean, I could make conjectures, because there are lots of three things in Buddhism. There's faith, questioning, and effort. There's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So there are many lists of three that are made. There's the list of the things that cause our suffering: desire, anger, ignorance. So I don't know what list of three they're talking about there. And if somebody knows, I'd love to hear about it. So that's my answer. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Judy, I'll throw one out.
Yeah.
We often talk about in our practice our direct experience, right? That
Yeah.
what we're actually talking about is as we experience things. So we use Zen as sort of the idea of our mind being like a mirror. Red comes only red, green comes only green, so forth. But even that's subjective, right? Because if you're colorblind, red isn't red. Red is something different. So does everything ultimately become subjective, not objective? That everything is really a matter of perception? Even quote direct experience is subjective.
Once you analyze it, you're wrong. You can call it objective or subjective. Once you analyze it wrong, you say someone who is colorblind and they see red in a mirror and it's not red. To them, it is red. That is what red means. To you, red means something else. Okay? So let's be very clear about that. So you're saying red is no more correct than somebody who's colorblind seeing something green and call it red, because to them, they're indistinguishable. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is this teaching of red comes only red, white comes only white, blue comes only blue, yellow comes only yellow. This is only a little piece. It is not complete. When someone is hungry, what do you do? When someone is thirsty, what do you do? That's very important. So this little piece about perceiving clearly, and when red comes red, what this means is not that you perceive red, it's that you see something without projecting onto it all your theories, all your ideas, all your prejudices, all your likes, all your dislikes. Like I hold up this watch and everyone can see it's a watch, and somebody says, oh, I wonder if that's a leather band. I don't like leather. Don't worry, it's a plastic band. I think the face is too big. I think the face is too small. I think it would look better if the band was lighter. I don't like watches. I just use my phone. I don't know why people wear watches anymore. Did she have numbers on the dial? Yes, she has numbers on the dial. I don't like to have numbers on the dial. It's sort of, that mind. Or I really like that watch. Oh, good, it has a plastic band and it's just the right size, and yeah, I think that's a really good watch. That mind that can't just see a watch, that has to make up stories about it. The mirror is about having this clear mind that sees a watch, that sees two, It doesn't say, why is she holding them this way, not this way, right? So the clear mirror is about the clarity. It's not about subjective or objective. It's about not putting our ideas and our likes and dislikes, not projecting them onto whatever we're doing. So that's what that's about. And then there's this wonderful phrase from the Avatamsaka Sutra that's in our morning bell chant. If you wish to understand all Buddhas of past, present, and future, and understand that the universe is created by mind alone. So what is objective? What is subjective? The minute we call this a watch, immediately we've made something. An elephant wouldn't call this a watch. Elephants don't tell time by watches. I don't know how they tell time or if they do at all, but certainly not by looking at a watch. An elephant doesn't have the concept of watch that we have. So we make everything. So that's very important. Our minds make everything. But then also this mind makes everything has another connotation, which is this universal mind. And that's very deep in Buddhism. This universal mind. Your mind is not just your mind. And even this watch has mind. Now it's not this watch has a mind, that would be the watch's mind. Mind, that mind pervades everything. So that's very interesting. So you didn't think you were asking this kind of question, were you? Yeah. But yeah, so objective, subjective, these are just names, and they shade into each other. And like all kinds of names, they're useful. We need to name things. We need language in order to function. But if we take it really seriously, if we take this difference seriously, oh, that's objective, that's subjective, then we have a problem. Because ultimately, everything connects, even our ideas, because objective and subjective, they don't exist in, the physical world, right? You don't walk down the street and say, oh, there's objectivity on the corner smoking a cigarette. It doesn't work that way, right? So yeah, so thank you for your unexpectedly complicated question. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Judy, I have a question.
Sure.
When we practice, there are often, for example, children or young people around, and Zen Buddhism is new definitely to them. So when they ask us questions about, what is Buddha, what does this story mean, what does this koan mean, things like this, as unexperienced as I am, should I try to explain things to them to the best of my ability? Or should I leave it unexplained and for them to discover when they are ready for it?
So this brings me to the point that Blake, and when it comes time for announcements, I'll ask him to talk about this. Blake is trying to put together a Dharma school for when we can safely reopen. So you live in town, right? So your kids should enroll in Dharma school. I mean, you're a mom. You always answer your kids' questions. Of course you answer them, but you answer them in a way they can understand, right? Like my son would say, why do you meditate? And I'd say, to be a good mother. And it's sort of true, I mean, yeah, if you're a mom and you practice Zen, and hopefully it'll open you up and wake you up and you'll be a better mother. So yeah, why not? That's a good thing to say to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. Yeah, helps me be a better mommy. Because they're wondering, why is she, in this case, running off to a particular room in your house where they're not allowed to go while you're in there doing this? Or, later, hopefully, you'll be running off to the Zen Center. They're not going to be following you unless they go to Dharma school, right? So why is mommy doing this? Doesn't she love us? Yes, I love you. That's why I'm doing it, because I love you, And who is the Buddha? Well, what can they understand? That's what you tell them. So just like they want to know where the rain comes from and where the snow comes from and what night is and what day is and, why sometimes people get sick and how people can get healthy and why they shouldn't run into the street and all this kind of stuff, you just respond in whatever way is appropriate. If we were in Asia, in a Buddhist country, kids would be running all over the place in the temples. Not during retreats, not during practice, but they'd be welcome in the temples. They'd be, there for certain kinds of ceremonies. They'd be there for certain kinds of celebrations. It would just be a part of their life. It wouldn't be anything strange. And it's kind of Western Zen in the Americas and in Europe. It's really different from Asia in that sense, that kids don't grow up, sort of with the temple as part of their lives, as a sort of natural part of their lives. Because, yeah, our centers tend to be very segregated from children. And there are a few, like we're going to try to have a Dharma school, and sometimes kids are welcome into certain, ceremonies. The so-called ethnic Buddhist communities are different because they're more like they are back home. And then, yeah, you will have kids running around. And, so just respond as you respond and contact Blake about Dharma school. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Judy, hi, it's Rusty. I have a question.
Sure.
So the mind creates everything, but I don't trust the decisions I make. I don't trust my mind. How do I make any decisions?
So mind creates, the universe is created by mind alone. That's not your mind. Okay? So the mind that makes decisions, the whole notion of making decisions is something that I have always found very strange. Because speaking very honestly, in my own life, I never felt that I made any decisions. Last night, my husband and I were sitting around, and we were thinking that an ice cream sundae would be kind of nice. But COVID was spiking and is spiking, unfortunately. And we didn't feel like going to Silas and Maddie's and standing in a long line of people breathing on each other, because most of them wouldn't wear masks. We probably would. And we didn't think of going to the other place in town, which isn't nearly as good. And, I thought, well, I could go to the Merc and I could get all the ingredients, and then they'd be smaller and we wouldn't get as fat. But, we didn't feel like doing that. And somehow we never ended up with ice cream sundaes. Now, did we make a decision? I don't know. We just didn't have ice cream sundaes. And if we'd gotten up and gone to Silas and Maddie's, which if you live in Lawrence, that's an amazing ice cream place. If we'd gone there, would we have made a decision? I don't know. We would have gone to Silas and Maddie's. I grew up all my life thinking I was going to be a high school English teacher. And then when it's time to apply to when I was in college, somebody said, no, you're too smart to be a high school English teacher, which is a terrible thing to say because we need the smartest people teaching kindergarten, for God's sake, But anyway, it was an elitist kind of place. And so, okay, I was going to be a college English teacher. And then I had to apply to graduate school, and I realized I don't want to go to graduate school. So I didn't apply to, with these decisions, they just seemed to happen. There was this guy in my life and he wouldn't go away, so I married him. Was that a decision? We've been together for, I don't know, 42 years now, and we love each other very deeply, but was that a decision? Was it a decision that I suddenly found myself in graduate school math? I don't know. So we think we make these decisions, but if we look really closely, I don't really know. And this is not like Buddhist philosophy or anything. I've read my own personal experience is I don't know what it means to make a decision. There's the very famous experiment where and this goes way back, like in the 60s or 70s, when they could first wire people up and brains, and they realized that when you tell a person, the experiment is a person is going to move their arm towards one or the other object, and they're going to press a button when they make the decision which to move the hand towards, which to pick up. The brain waves happen to pick up the object before the one that goes to push the button, to say, oh, I've made my decision. So I don't really know what it means to make a decision. Be open. Act appropriately. On the other hand, there's this thing called direction. So in the precept sermon, we say you must make a firm decision. And I forget what the rest of it is, but somebody must make a firm decision to, practice or something like that, except it's more poetical. You must make a firm decision. So that's about direction. And whether it's a conscious decision, like our life was like this and suddenly, boom, our life was like that, and we think that somehow this was the controlling factor, or whether it's just that we say, oh, this is what I'm doing, Just like some people that are alcoholics and suddenly they stop drinking, boom. Most people, it's not that easy. It's very difficult, in fact, that some people just boom, But this firm decision, that means commitment. So we make a commitment to practice. We make a commitment to our spouse. We make a commitment to our children. We make a commitment to our job. We make a commitment to our friends. So that commitment is what's important. So this decision is about, this word decision, what it's about in this context is commitment. You make this commitment, and hopefully you're able to hold to this commitment, whatever happens. So yeah. So on the one hand, don't ever trust this, conscious mind that always leads us astray. And on the other hand, and this is very important, believe in yourself 100%. That means when you do something, you commit to it. You don't look back and say, oh, maybe I should have done that. If what you decided, if what you're doing is wrong for you, if it doesn't fit, if it's causing problems for other people, if it's causing problems for yourself, sure, change. But this deep, deep nature that we all have, that we have to believe in completely, and we have to believe in ourselves 100%, and that means believe in our true self, the self that is much more fundamental than this sort of surface mind that's always going Okay? So thank you. I'm glad you decided to ask that question. Okay. And it's time to stop. So I should stop being recorded.